Immigration New Zealand, formerly the New Zealand Immigration Service, is the agency within the New Zealand Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment that is responsible for border control, issuing travel visas and managing immigration to New Zealand. Immigration New Zealand's origins can be traced back to an informal immigration department that was established within the Lands and Survey Department in 1909. The Immigration Department was tasked with finding employment for new immigrants. In response to demand for more workers in the manufacturing sector, Prime Minister William Massey announced the formation of an official immigration department in 1912. This immigration department initially had 6 staff and was headed by J. E. Smith. This department assumed the immigration functions of the Public Works and Lands and Survey departments. However, the First World War prevented a large-scale assisted program to New Zealand. In 1931, the Immigration Department and the Department of Labour were merged into a combined Department of Labour and Immigration. By 1946, the Department of Labour's immigration function had been transferred to a newly created Immigration Division, headed by Jack Brennan. This Immigration Division was tasked with administering New Zealand's post-war assisted immigration scheme and came under the oversight of a newly created immigration ministerial portfolio. Following the Second World War, the Secretary of Labour Herbert Leslie Bockett expanded the Immigration Division by establishing sections in Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, and Dunedin district offices. A migration office was also opened in London opposite the New Zealand High Commission in London. The Department of Labour used advertisement and booklets to encourage European immigration to New Zealand during the post-World War II boom. In 1971, the Immigration Division cooperated with the then Ministry of Foreign Affairs to expand immigration to Asians with professional and technical qualifications, English language skills, and specific jobs. By 1975, rising unemployment led the New Zealand government to end its assisted migration scheme for migrants. Under the leadership of Assistant Secretary J. L. Fahey, the Immigration Division was tasked with enforcing the Immigration Act 1964. During the 1970s and early 1980s, the Immigration Division and Department of Labour was tasked with managing various issues including Pacific Islander overstayers and refugees from Vietnam and Cambodia. In response, the Department of Labour established a work permit scheme for Tongan, Fijian and Samoan migrants in 1975. The Immigration Division also established a resettlement unit to manage the resettlement of Indo-Chinese refugees in New Zealand. By 1985, more than 6,000 Vietnamese and Cambodian refugees had settled in New Zealand. By 1984, the Department of Labour's Immigration Division had 157 staff. Following a review of the Department of Labour in 1988, the Immigration Division was revamped as the Immigration Service. The Immigration Service established 3 regional and 4 branch offices. Staff numbers rose from 139 to 324 by 1992. By the early 1990s, Asia and the Pacific Islands had replaced the United Kingdom and Europe as the main source of New Zealand's immigration. In 1993, the Immigration Service was reorganized to accommodate the increased number of tourists and to shift much of the immigrant processing to staff overseas. In response to the increasing strain placed by immigration on New Zealand's social infrastructure, particularly housing and education, the Department of Labour tightened English language and capital requirements. In 2004, Immigration New Zealand was designated as the government agency in charge of migration settlement. In 2005, the 5th Labour government established the Pacific Division to improve visa and immigration services in the Pacific Islands and for Pacific Islanders living in New Zealand. In 2009, a report by the Controller and Auditor General identified a range of problems including poor leadership, mismanagement, lack of accountability and transparency, poor services, and a fiefdom mentality. In response to the report, the 5th National Government dissolved the Pacific Division and reintegrated into INZ. after the Department of Labor was merged into the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment in July 2012. Immigration New Zealand was incorporated into the new ministry. Immigration New Zealand is an agency within the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment that is responsible for facilitating and regulating immigration, tourism, foreign students and workers, and foreign investment in New Zealand. Immigration NZ's other responsibilities include migrant attraction, visa facilitation, border protection and refugee resettlement. As of 2017, the division has 5 branches. Administratively, Immigration NZ is headed by Deputy Chief Executive Greg Patchell. Politically, the agency